it's just Martine, and today I'm going to be reading books in French. My name is French because French is my mother's first language. I went to kindergarten in French. I took 4 years of French in high school. I have over a 700-day streak on Duolingo for French. And do I feel like I'm any good at French? No. So today I'm putting myself to the test. I'm reading 2 books entirely in French and seeing how they go. The first is a collection of short children's stories, I'm trying to give myself some help. And then the second is more of a middle grade book that's a fantasy. So I threw in a bit of a challenge for me. Let's see how it goes. The first book I read for this was actually, I think it was like 8 or 9 short stories. So it's from a children's series called Martine. The books were like gifted to me growing up because she has my name, but I had never fully read this collection, Martine, Histoire d'un jour. So I made a point and I read them. There were definitely lots of words that I did not know, which part of me at first was very frustrated because I was like, these are children's stories, so why are there so many words I don't know? But then I had a conversation with my sister about it, and she's like, well, you know, the point of a lot of these children's stories is to teach kids new words. So like, you didn't know the word, I mean, a kid probably hadn't seen them written down before either. That's totally fine. Sometimes I decided I need to look up this word to get the context. Sometimes I didn't look up the word because I felt like I had the context. I felt like one of my favorite parts of this were the illustrations. The illustrations were just so beautiful. I've always loved this illustration style. I just also think young Martine in this collection had like such banger outfits. I don't know how to describe it. She just always had the coolest stuff, and I think maybe that was like a virtue of when it was written, and I just like styles from that time. But yeah, she was great, and she was the perfect mix of like adventurous, and she was a bit of a tomboy, just ready to explore the world and stuff. So it was definitely enjoyable, and I'm glad to say that I've read that full collection now, in spite of like how challenging it was at times. It was also interesting because there were some stories that I felt like were harder to understand than others. So like, I had read one of the stories about this witch who lived next door from Martine, and I felt like I pretty much understood that story, like I was following along. I got the point at the end of the story, and the very next story afterwards, I even forget which one it was, but I felt like I had missed a lot more of it. And for me, it's frustrating when I'm reading in French because as much as you want to expand your vocabulary and use that as an exercise to continue your learning, at the same time, you don't want to be looking up every second word. If you're having trouble, like you try to rely on context, or you try and say, okay, well, I didn't really get it that time, and you move on. So for sake of time, I didn't really like look up everything that I didn't understand. And part of me thinks maybe that was the wrong decision, but at the same time, I just wanted to enjoy my time reading it. And if there was a word I was really curious about, I did take the time and look into it. I tried to strike a balance of that, but overall, I'm glad I did it. And I'm worried for the next book. I forgot to mention, I gave Martine, Histoire d'un jour 4 stars. I did it. I read this whole book in French. Rendez-vous à Blackforge. Listen. For a while there, I was making good progress in this because for the last few days of the 75 hard reading challenge that I did with some of my friends, this was my physical backlist book for the day, so I got 30 minutes of reading done, which usually was equivalent to like 20 pages of this for me. Sometimes when I was reading it, I was like, I don't know that word, I'm gonna look it up. Sometimes I was like, I don't know that word, oh well, and moved on. But overall, I knew basically what happened in this book. Like, when I filled my sister in on where I was in the book, I told her the basic premise of everything that had happened so far. And I was like, see, look, I know what's going on. I'm giving this 2.5 stars for a couple reasons. It's partially because I didn't understand everything, and so I'm sure there are important things about the story I missed, but I largely think it's just the story itself. So in this book, we follow several characters, and 3 of these characters get these random invitations to visit this old castle, Black Forge, and they're under like weird circumstances. So 2 of them are museum people, like they work at a museum, and they're invited under the guise that this castle has been turned into a museum and they want to work together or something. And then the other one is an ecologist, and the invitation is basically like, we're part of an environmental nonprofit and we're working with logopeds. You know, you should come out and help with our work. So these 3 people go, and they meet up together along with this pilot who has to bring them like closer to it because it's kind of in a weird location. And then things start being really weird in the castle. For one, there's nobody there. So they've been invited to this thing, but there's nobody there. They've been invited for different reasons, yet they're all there at the same time. So all in all, it's just very strange. And then Alternatively, we're following the perspective of one of those characters' boyfriends who's like, my girlfriend's missing. And so he tries to track down what has happened, finds out about this invitation to the castle. And then it's weird because people are like, this castle is just ruins. It's not a full castle. We don't know why these people went here. So he's trying to find them. The amount of talk about the environment in here was a little strange. I mean, I appreciate an environmental diatribe, don't get me wrong, but I just felt like it was kind of misplaced in here. Like, we had this weird adventure horror story and the characters just spent like a lot of page time talking about the environment. On the one hand, I was like, wow, I can read about the environment in French. I know what's happening when I read about the environment in French. Cool factoid, I didn't know. But on the other hand, I was like, is this really relevant to the story? There were lots of words I didn't know, and when I looked them up, I was like, this is why I don't know it, because it was words for things like dwarves, and there were gnomes involved in all of these different things, so it was like, yeah, my French textbook never taught me that, you know? Which is one of the reasons I was interested to read this book in particular in French, and why I picked it up when I bought it, is because I was like, I'm sure there's going to be some interesting vocabulary in here that I have not seen. And I think in some ways, so long as you're patient enough to like look up those words who, in the context of the story, you're like, this is definitely important, but I've never seen this word before, then you definitely learn words by reading in other languages. For example, the first time I learned the word chuchoter in French, which means to whisper, it was from reading an online book in French. I don't look up every word I don't know, but the ones that I do look up help grow my vocabulary for the language. It's very mentally taxing, especially when I would get in my head about it. I'd be reading, I was like, I don't know what's happening. I had to like calm down and remind myself like, you do know what's happening, it's fine. And then it would get easier. So there was kind of a mental block with it, which was weird. And the ending, I really didn't have a good time with, which is why it took me so much longer to get through the last, I'd say, third than the first 2/3. Not just because the 75 hard reading challenge was over, but also because whenever I picked it up, I was like, this is not interesting to me. Because once we got into the idea of like parallel universes and stuff, it just, there were some answers I never got that would have been helpful. And then the ending of this, it was just weird. 2.5 stars, but I'm super proud of myself for reading this and glad I did it as part of this challenge. Glad I did this challenge in general to like show myself I haven't completely lost the language. It's just easy sometimes to tell myself I've lost all my French, and it's like, well, you know, you can read like a middle grade book in French and there will be words you don't know, but they're fake words, and there will be other things you don't know and you'll learn. And like, in general, it's good to do difficult things sometimes. I will probably not make this a habit though. Overall, I'm really proud of myself just for giving this a try and doing what I could. I think I learned a lot of things doing this and I had a good time, so yay! If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below. What should they comment, Ernie? Are you learning the language? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!